This is an introduction to Nansen, the main app of the Nansen package. Nansen consists of 3 pages. One which is an overview page showing a session table with a list of sessions that belong to the project that I'm working on. Second page is a file viewer where we can list files that belong to a session. And the last page is a task processor where we can list tasks that should be run for a session. The session contains a set of variables. These are default variables that will be added for every session, but it's also possible to create custom variables. The FOV region at the end here is an example of a custom variable, but we can make as many as we want. The table can be sorted according to all the different variables. We can sort by subject or mouse ID, we can sort by date, we can sort by time, etc. We can also filter the table, so I can select now a subset of mice to only view the sessions of these mice. For moving on, I'm going to now just select this one demo session. As you can see, there are some more table variables here. One is a data location, which shows which data location is available for this session. And here we can see that the data location called raw data is available, and also the data location called processed, but the last one, the raw data rig, is not available for this session. There's a progress bar showing a list of tasks that belongs to the pipeline for this session and whether or not these tasks have been completed. Right now this just shows some random states. There's also a notebook for each of the sessions, and this session now has a note that I just added. I can double click and view what the note is saying. I can also right click the session and I can create new notes. I can give it a title. And I can save it, and then my table updates and shows that there are 2 notes belonging to this session. The notes is a useful feature for collaboration on projects. Say that some person is involved in doing the experiments and another person is involved in the analysis of the data. Having such a notebook that follows each of the sessions is useful in order to track what's been done to the session, either during the experiments or during analysis. Now that we have selected a session, we can also look at the files belonging to this session. The first page here is the raw data, which is the 2-photon raw data. There's one file here called .raw, and this contains the raw imaging data. I can double click it to open it in the ImViewer. And I can use the ImViewer to see if the quality of the data is good. I can also here check out the motion correction of the images by using, for example, a normcore package. Selecting the normcore package will open some options that I can set. I can, for example, change how to divide the image while for running the motion correction. And I can set some other things, but one of the main things that can be useful here is the preview tab, where I can select a subset of frames and then run a preview correction. This will give me an idea of whether the settings work for the particular session that I have. Close this, and then we can look at the tab called processed, where we have all the data which is processed for this session. For example, there is a folder containing output from the motion correction. There's a folder containing some FOV images. In this case, there's an average projection FOV image. And there are other things like ROI data and ROI signals, etc. For this session, the raw data rig is not available. On the task processor tab, there will be a list of tasks that are in this case queued. I can go to the session table and I can select one or more sessions here and run or start different tasks by going to the menus here that contain different session methods. For example, we have some auto segmentation methods, and the extract method is a very good auto segmentation method. When I select extract, there are two options here, and these are two preset option templates for running extract. I can also press Q when I'm looking at this, and when I press Q on the keyboard and select this option, it basically creates a task which is added to the task processor here. I can right click and I can run this task, or I can wait till later and I can collect more tasks that I want to run, for example, through the night. As I mentioned earlier, it's possible to create custom table variables. This is done by going to the meta table menu and selecting the new table variable. I can, for example, say that this variable should be called is motion corrected. I can select the data type. In this case, it makes sense that this is illogical, and I can select how the values should be entered, either manually by just typing them in a table, or getting the values from a function, or getting the values from a list. If I select get values from a function, then I have to write a function that provides me with the value for that given session. Or if I select get values from a list, I can make a list of values that I can select from. In this case, I just say enter values manually. Now there's a new table variable here, which I can add, or which I can click and add a value to. Let's go back to my demo session, and this is corrected, so I would select is corrected. The FOV region is actually an example of table variable which is updated from a function. Right now it's just giving me the function is just giving a random FOV region, but it would be possible to write a function that based on the session object would determine what FOV region this session has. So if I right click and say update column variable and select FOV region, this method now updates the value of the cell. I will now go quickly through the menu options. So there are menu options for creating and changing projects. We can do some configurations. This is part of the setup where we can configure the data locations and the variables for this session table. We can choose or set preferences. We can refresh either the menus or the table itself. Or we can close all figures that are open in MATLAB. On the session menu, we can create a new session method, or we can create pipelines or edit pipelines, and we can also get the task lists that are available for a session, or we can detect new sessions. The last four remaining menus contain different session methods. I will show a few examples of some session methods that can be used to visualize data. For example, we have a method called view delta f over f. If I press it, it's probably going to take some seconds, but then it's opening a viewer for the ROI signals that are extracted for this session. This viewer now shows all the signals that are available. But I can zoom in along the y-axis and see the signals more close up. I can also zoom on the x-axis. And using this GUI I think is useful in order to check or validate that the signals are looking healthy. I can close this and I can go to the process, and as I already showed, we can run some auto segmentation, or we can do signal extraction, etc, etc. Now the last thing that might be interesting to show here is this pipeline editor. So right now I've just created two testing pipelines, one is calcium imaging. So if I open this, a new window opens where I can now select different methods from a list and add them to my pipeline. In this case, we have started to, the first entry in the list is a motion correction, and then an auto segmentation called Quickie. And then we can do some ROI correlation using either the ROI manager or another GUI called a ROI classifier. After we have done that, it's natural to do signal extraction and computation of delta F over F. And after that, we could also do a deconvolution. So there's a method here for doing deconvolution, and I can add it to the list. If I close this and save, my pipeline will be updated, and now I can check my session and double-click the progress bar to see this the pipeline for this session. And we see that on the end here we have this Kaiman deconvolution method added. In this session, that was the wrong window, but let's try it. For this session, the motion correction has run, but it's not showing up here because I haven't registered it. But what I can do is I can go to the session and I can get a list of queuable tasks for that session. And then we see it shows Normco and Quickie. There were more methods, but some of those are manual, like opening a ROI manager, which we cannot run on queue. But I can now select these and I can add them to the task processor queue. If I close the window and go to the task processor queue, we see that there are now two more methods that are added here. Lastly, I will just say that these are actually done. And now we can go back and we can say get manual task list. This will show tasks that are manual that should be done. I can now select this, open ROI classifier. This is a manual step, so if I double click it, it will actually provide me with a GUI for doing this step. It gives me a list where I can select some ROIs to load. And then it opens this manual classifier tool. This is a tool where I can basically select which ROIs look good and which does not look good. There are already some marked here, they are not marked correctly, but the idea is that we can go through the list and we can select, either we can select one or we can select many which we think look good. I close this. And I think for now I've shown most of the features that are available in this app.